If you clicked on this video, chances are you're aiming to reach financial freedom at some point in your life. And that's a goal that's becoming more common every single day, especially here in 2026. Now, when most people talk about financial freedom and try to explain how to get there, a lot of that advice tends to revolve around increasing your income. They'll tell you to start a side hustle, something like launching a YouTube channel, build a drop shipping business, learning to code, or becoming a software developer. And to be fair, having a higher income obviously makes the journey to financial freedom easier. But the problem I have with that advice is I personally know plenty of people who earn 2, 3, or even 4 times what I make, and yet they're still living paycheck to paycheck. They're still planning to retire at 65, and they're likely going to stay stuck in that cycle for most of their lives. So if financial freedom was purely about income, why don't those people already have it? Why aren't they financially free? In my opinion, it comes down to habits. Financial freedom is built through the habits you consistently choose to follow. And I truly believe that no matter what income level you're currently at watching this video, you can achieve financial freedom simply by doing the basics right. It doesn't require a 6-figure salary. So in this video, I'm going to break down what I believe is the simplest and easiest path to financial freedom, regardless of how much money you make. So let's get into it. First of all, I think the most important step toward financial freedom is setting the right expectations for what it actually means to you. Now, I'd recommend taking maybe 30 minutes to sit down and really define your vision of financial freedom. This matters more than people realize, because if you don't clearly define it, you'll end up chasing the wrong version of it. And what I mean is this. When most people hear financial freedom, they picture someone making millions, living in massive houses, never working, owning a huge fleet of cars, and wearing expensive watches. And when that's your standard, it feels almost impossible to reach. So what people end up doing is pushing the idea away entirely because they think it's unrealistic, or they convince themselves they need to earn a ton of money before they can even think about being financially free. But in reality, I believe financial freedom is much simpler than that. Strip away the income side of it, and it really comes down to this: being able to cover your expenses without constantly stressing about money. It's having the ability to walk away from a job or situation you don't want to be in. It's not feeling trapped in a lifestyle just because you need a paycheck. That's it. And once you start viewing financial freedom through that lens, it becomes something you can actively work toward right now, instead of some distant goal that only happens if everything in your life goes perfectly. Another benefit of this mindset is that it keeps you grounded. When you define financial freedom properly, you stop comparing yourself to people online who are only showing the highlight reels of their lives. You stop chasing things you don't actually care about, and instead start focusing on what gives you more control and peace in your day-to-day life. Because at the end of the day, financial freedom has never really been about having everything. It's about reaching a point where money no longer controls your life. So that is step 1. Next, once you've defined financial freedom, the second step is learning how to be smart with your money. What I like to call being cheap in the right way, while still enjoying your life. I know the word cheap has a negative feel to it. People hear it and they think it means you're never having fun or you're always missing out. But that's not what I mean. What I really mean is becoming more intentional with big expenses that are costing you the most money every month. Most people, when they think about saving money, focus on small things like cutting out a $4 coffee or canceling a $20 subscription. And while those things definitely help, they often ignore the bigger expenses, like paying $3,000 a month for a luxury apartment they don't actually need. The same goes for cars, housing, and major purchases. That's where the real money is. For example, choosing a brand new car instead of a reliable used one can cost you tens of thousands of dollars over time and can potentially set you back years financially. And the reality is, both cars can get you from point A to point B. One just costs way more. The same applies to housing. Living slightly below your means creates extra breathing room every month, while maxing out your budget does the opposite. So this step isn't about cutting everything out. It's about questioning your biggest expenses and asking yourself, hey, is there a cheaper, more effective way to get the same result? And most of the time, I can guarantee you there is. And a great example of this would be your housing. You can choose to live alone in a high-end apartment that stretches your budget. Or you can live with a roommate or pick a more modest place and cut that cost significantly. I know some people that are paying over $3,000 a month just to live alone, while others, like myself, split rent and pay half of that for a very similar lifestyle. And at the end of the day, both options give you a place to live. You're just choosing how much you're willing to spend for it. Every time you make the smarter, more cost-effective choice on those big decisions, you create more breathing room in your budget without really changing your day-to-day life. And that extra money is what allows you to save more, invest more, and move forward financially without needing to earn more money. Now, the next step is creating a gap between what you earn and what you spend. And this is probably the simplest concept, but it's also one of the hardest to actually follow. This is the entire game when it comes to personal finance. If there's no money left over at the end of the month, there's nothing to build wealth with. It doesn't matter how much you earn. You could make $300,000 a year, but if you're spending $400,000, you're still going to be stuck. You're not going to make any progress. So the goal is pretty straightforward. You need money left over each month. And it doesn't have to be a huge amount. A lot of people mess this up by setting unrealistic expectations. They think they need $1,000 surplus right away. But it could be $50, $100, $200. It doesn't matter. The key is consistency. Now, there are two ways to create this gap. You can spend less, or you can earn more. And like I mentioned earlier, I prefer focusing on spending less in the beginning because it's faster and it's more within your control. Earning more takes time. It could take months or even years before you start earning more money. But adjusting your spending can happen immediately. You can start by looking at your fixed expenses, things like your rent, your car payment, and your insurance, because that's where most of your money goes. If those are too high, everything else becomes tight. Then, look at your variable spending and cut out what doesn't actually matter to you. Once you create that gap, that's when things start moving forward. That extra money becomes your savings, your investments, and your progress. Without it, there is no progress. So before anything else, focus on consistently having money left over at the end of the month. Keep it realistic and do not feel discouraged if it's small. Consistency matters more than size in the beginning. Once you've done that, defined financial freedom, controlled your spending, and created a gap, the next step is to start saving aggressively. And again, simple in theory, but difficult in practice. But this is where real progress begins. I'm not talking about saving 5% or just whatever happens to be left over. You need to be intentional. Saving gives you control in the short term. It builds your emergency fund, covers unexpected expenses, and prevents you from going into debt. It also gives you flexibility in your life. The goal here is to set a realistic savings target and, if possible, automate it. Treat your savings like a bill, something that gets paid no matter what. If you had a $300 monthly bill, you wouldn't skip it. So don't skip your savings either. Every dollar you save today is one less problem you have to solve later. Once you've built a solid savings base and have an emergency fund in place, you can shift your focus to investing. And the next step is to invest aggressively. At this stage, your job is to put all of that extra money to work. Saving protects your money, but investing grows it. Think of saving as a defense and investing as an offense. You don't need to pick individual stocks or try to time the market. The goal here is consistency. You need to be regularly investing into something solid over the long term, like an index fund. Being aggressive here doesn't mean taking huge risks. It means consistently investing a significant portion of your income. The more you invest, the more your returns start to matter over time. Eventually, your investments begin doing more of the work than you do. And for this step, make sure to keep it simple. Stick to a basic strategy, maybe one or two funds, and just keep adding money to it. Do not overthink it, and do not constantly check your account. And, if possible, automate your investments so it happens without you needing to think about it. And finally, the last step, and honestly the least exciting part, is repetition. You have to do this over and over again for years without getting discouraged. Nothing in this process is complicated. The hardest part is sticking with it long enough to see the results. At first, this is going to feel really slow, and you honestly might not notice much progress. Even after a few years, it can feel like nothing has really changed. But that's completely normal. Financial growth isn't linear. It starts slow, but it's eventually going to snowball. And when it does, the progress starts to feel fast. Most people don't fail because they have the wrong strategy. They fail because they quit too early. But if you can stay consistent and give it time, you'll already be ahead of most people. So that's it. That's the simple and easiest path. No secret strategies, no perfect timing, just a few basic steps done consistently. If you set the right expectations, control your spending, create a gap and pay off debt, then save and invest aggressively and repeat, I promise your financial freedom will come. I started doing this when I was making $14 an hour, and I'm still doing these same steps today. It's not flashy, but it works. And if you stick with it, a few years from now, you'll look back and realize how far you've come. If there's one thing to take away from this video, it's this. You don't need to do everything at once. Just focus on doing the right things consistently over time. Master one step, then move on to the next. And that's all you really need to reach financial freedom. So if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. I'll see you all in the next one.